You know, every time I think I've heard it all in heavy metal, something will emerge to remind me that I know absolutely nothing. I always find it interesting to look back over the decades of metal to see how the popular trends of the genre tend to change over time. As metalheads, we always proudly proclaim that our scene isn't as fickle as the popular music scene. While I will agree metal isn't steered by something like a top 40 list or anything like that, I think it would be disingenuous to suggest that metal doesn't have popular trends that tend to come and go. These days, what seems to be ruling over the newer metal bands that are breaking big in the scene is metal that is drawing directly from popular music, and thereby making their music more accessible. Bring Me the Horizon have famously moved their music into a more accessible remit and are now headlining festivals. Orgasm, while not especially accessible, do draw from that synthy hyperpop style, and the meteoric rise of Sleep Token speaks for itself. For the record, I don't have an issue with this current trend in metal. I thought Sleep Token's last album was pretty great, in fact. I'm certainly not one of those gatekeepers who think these influences have no place in heavy metal. That being said, even I had to raise an eyebrow the first time I heard Scene Queen. Such a loud, abrasive juxtaposition of Kesha-style pop music and chunky mathcore breakdowns felt like the most extreme clash of two styles I'd heard in some time. As predicted, this has split opinion right down the middle of the metal world, with her coverage in metal media growing by the month and a download festival debut this year. Scene Queen's debut album, Hot Singles in the Area, will either be one of the most anticipated or dreaded albums of 2024, depending on whom you ask. So the debate has surrounded Scene Queen since she blew up. Has this trend of pop metal gone too far now? Let's take things back to the beginning. Scene Queen is the project from US artist Hannah Collins. In her youth, she was a fan of the scene bands like Pierce the Veil and Sleeping with Sirens, but grew disenfranchised after the apparent misogyny in that world, and feeling it wasn't an especially welcoming or safe space for women in particular. After exploring genres of pop and hip-hop, she returned to the alternative music scene with the intention of incorporating all of her musical influences. Originally under the name Rose, Collins garnered much attention with TikToks about Warped Tour and bands within that particular scene. With this online following, her debut single titled Are You Tired went viral and was eventually picked up and distributed by DistroKid. If you haven't heard the track Are You Tired, it is wildly different from what Scene Queen would eventually sound like. It's basically a straight up alt-rock emo track. Not a bad song, all things considered, but nothing earth-shatteringly new. With a change in style, Collins rebranded as Scene Queen and dropped her debut EP in 2022 titled Bimbo Core. To say this pissed off a lot of people would be a massive understatement. Scene Queen's music is unashamedly pink and pop-inspired and completely at odds with what an artist from the alternative scene is supposed to present themselves as. Whenever I have a momentary lapse of sanity, I do end up opening the comments on an article that mentions Scene Queen, only to be met with some of the most moronic, basement-dwelling, sexist drivel I've read about any artist in a very long time. Ah yes, the old industry plant argument, because if there's one music genre which pop label executives are desperate to break into, it's the incredibly lucrative heavy metal genre. But this one comment here is the absolute height of irony. Basically, you need boundaries to defend the communities, music, etc., and of course, metal. Over-inclusiveness to the point where you destroy the core values destroys the group. Metal used to sound badass, powerful, brutal, threatening, and exciting, but recent years to push softer, weaker popsy artists like her or Machine Gun Kelly have almost ruined the genre and its reputation to the core, and any calling out this bullshit is labelled as gatekeeping. I or anyone don't have any problem with people of different sex, age, race, religion, place, etc. liking and enjoying metal music, but when someone tries to push a softcore mainstream band / artist who are either trashy with bad lyrics, softcore people crying about girlfriend breakups, that's what's frustrating. Besides, there are badass female-fronted bands like Nervosa, Battle Beast, Warlock, Frozen Crown, Crystal Viper, and a lot more, which blow the roofs off and make Machine Gun Kelly, Scene Queen, Lorna Shore? What the fuck? I'm sure I heard that on Capital FM last week, and other soft mainstream artists piss in their pants. Jesus Christ. I really don't see the hypocrisy in claiming they have an issue being called a gatekeeper whilst literally opening their rant by claiming being inclusive destroys the values of heavy metal. Fucking hell. I will just make this very clear for the people in the back. I am not saying everyone who doesn't like this music is therefore by default sexist or misogynistic. Plenty are just people getting irrationally angry that there is metal out there they don't like. That is nothing new. And of course, some are just reasonable people who admit it's not for them. If you have given this music a try and can reasonably say, that's not my thing, and then you go about your day, great. You're an adult. I'm simply pointing out that with Scene Queen specifically, this shit is everywhere, and it's truly depressing. I really don't know why I read Facebook and Instagram comments. Weirdly, for Metal Hammer specifically, it's never anything other than just toxic and exclusionary nonsense. And while I'm on the topic, just a tip if you are one of those people who feel the need to comment on every single Metal Hammer post. If you bemoan or complain or otherwise get very riled up about Metal Hammer posting the same band over and over again, or are posting a particularly controversial artist, you're not sticking it to Metal Hammer, you're doing exactly what they want you to do. But undeterred by all this online abuse, Scene Queen released Bimbo Core Volume 2 later that same year, and the hype for this project was continuing to grow. At long last, we arrive at the long-awaited debut album, Hot Singles in Your Area. The musical approach on this album is very much in line with the first two EPs and other singles released up to this point. It is, as expected, Kesha-style pop hooks and rapping, with occasional slamming mathcore guitars and drums exploding in at various intervals. I know I've used Kesha as my example for what the pop bits sound like to me a couple times in this video, but that's because that's the only artist I could think that sounded remotely like this. Surprise, surprise, I know nothing about pop music. When the music combines both these styles together in one song, be it at the same time or when they trade off from one another, it is definitely the most interesting aspect of this music. Love it or hate it, it is certainly unique, and I'm going to piss off a few people here, but at times, it's really fucking heavy.
Refreshing page.
The ending of the opening track BDSM, which according to the lyrics actually stands for Beat Down Slut Metal, who knew, is nuts, with slamming riffs and high harsh vocals, and those dark synths in the verses are genuinely unsettling at times. I know some people have professed that this is just pop music with the occasional guitar riff, but I simply don't agree. So I guess I'll settle this argument right here, right now. Is Scene Queen pop with metal trimmings, or is it metal with pop trimmings? I figured it out. The pop bits are pop and the metal bits are metal. Moving on. 18 plus as well, it does have balls when it goes all out. I also quite like Mutual Masturbation as well. Please don't take that soundbite. It's got some good hooks, and that chorus is, dare I say it, really catchy. So there is plenty here for me to enjoy. I will be honest though, those parts within the songs where it is pure pop music, when the rapping vocals and weird synths are in the forefront between the metal sections, it can be a little hard for me to get through sometimes. The songs where the metal is pushed right to the back are admittedly the tracks I like the least. MILF, I don't really like at all. The out of nowhere country style song wore thin, very fast, and the heavy riff we do get sounded quite clumsy compared to the others on the album.
Everybody two-step!
The song Stuck as well is pretty much a straight pop track, so I didn't particularly enjoy that one either. Not because it's bad, just because it's not really my thing. I'm not into pop music, I never have been, but that doesn't mean I can't listen to this and appreciate the artistic merit in what Scene Queen is doing. What kept me hooked though with this album is its subject matter. Now, hear me out. The key theme for hot singles in the area, and for most of Scene Queen's music really, is sex. In all forms, sex is in the forefront. It's shocking, it's explicit, and it's the entire point of the album. If it was just explicit for explicit sake, I likely wouldn't have given it the time of day. However, Scene Queen uses the topic of sex in two key ways, the first being sexual freedom, the second being highlighting the worst parts of the industry. My god, I have not heard an album as bleakly honest as this in a very long time. This isn't raw honesty like, say, Svalbard, which is all about expressing one's personal inner turmoil, which I love, of course. This is a pointed call-out on how messed up the music industry is. BDSM is probably the most expected of the bunch, with the lyrics calling out the angry comments online from people who are horrified that this even exists in the first place. I can't wait to see people take the line "Scene Queen hates men" completely at face value and miss the irony. And when I say this album gets dark, I mean it gets really fucking dark. All of the messages of these songs are very on the nose, and that is completely intentional. There is no attempt at subtlety here. The album wants you to know exactly where Scene Queen stands. 18 Plus tackles the wave of bands in recent years that have been exposed for their despicable sexual conduct on tours with young women. The text-to-speech section coming in.
The allegations that have been made against a member of are a matter we do not take lightly.
For a split second, I found that funny, and then I was grimly aware how often I see that exact statement from bands. Whips and Chains calls out sexual violence directly, and Mutual Masturbation highlights how women are actively excluded from the scene. I feel like we all know that this dark, seedy shit happens within not just metal but music in general. But to have an artist call out this stuff directly, not just in an interview when pushed for a comment, but within the musical identity of the project itself, is honestly refreshing. I'm sure Collins knew the wave of bullshit she'd get from daring to go for these topics, but she seemingly doesn't care.
You're just met with the most, like, misogynistic tank top wearing men that you could possibly imagine. So I was just getting all these comments that were like, you're too prissy to be doing this, just like straight up misogyny, like not even hiding the misogyny, just like women cannot do this. And I was like,
that's the internet for you.
The message is more important, and I think that's commendable. I've mentioned this in a review of the album for another website, that I couldn't help feel that the pop versus metal sound is meant to be an ironic depiction of the industry, with the pop sounds being representative of the product that is mass-produced and sold to the public, whereas the metal depicts the gross underbelly of the industry. I'm probably looking way too deep into it, but that extra level of commentary is what won me over with this album. Musically, it is the very definition of acquired taste, at least for me, but I couldn't help but admire that Scene Queen has something to say, and what she is saying is worth listening to. Popular music gets criticised a lot for being sexually explicit for the sake of it. I'm not about to debate for or against that here. Scene Queen takes that imagery and pushes it to the absolute extreme. Any of her tracks will demonstrate that. It's not music for someone of a puritanical disposition. You would never hear this on mainstream radio. It pushes the boundaries of what's acceptable, which I always thought was the point of alternative music to begin with. Beyond just using her platform to call out issues within music, Collins explores sexual freedom within her music. Hannah Collins proudly identifies as LGBTQIA+. In fact, it was the song Pink Panther on Bimbocore where she publicly acknowledged her bisexuality. The fact this music gave her the outlet where she felt she could come out, I think, is a wonderful thing. I'm not saying people have to come out, that is everyone's own business to do if and when they choose. But if Scene Queen's music offers a community and fanbase where people don't feel they have to be ashamed of their sexual journey, that can only be a good thing in my mind. I thought long and hard over many days about whether I should make and release this video. Not because of potential toxic comments, that comes with this hobby and you have to learn to accept that. I've been wondering whether I should be the one addressing the issues raised in this album. In my couple years of interviewing metal artists, I have had the privilege to speak to some remarkable women in the scene. every now and then I do feel the need to ask for their perspective on sexism in heavy metal. I will always preface my questions with, as a guy, I know I can't be completely aware of your experience. What I mean by this is my observation of sexism in metal is almost meaningless, as I don't experience it. I can see nasty comments on a Metal Hammer article whenever a band with a woman is written about, but to live that experience is something I can never imagine or ever experience. So essentially, I don't know if I'm qualified to do a think piece about an album that directly draws from and comments on that experience. Add to that, but I'm a straight, white, cis dude from the UK. I can mention how this album may be a safe space for people who identify as LGBTQIA+, but I'm not an authority on that. These demographics are the real authority, and whose opinions really matter. If this video does well, but other pieces from women or people who identify as LGBTQIA+ fall by the wayside, I will feel pretty bad about that. It's very unlikely, I have less than 350 subs, but were it to happen, it would feel unjust to me, because my voice is not the important one here. At the end of the day, I wanted to talk about this album and what Scene Queen and what Hannah Collins' music says to me, because I think what she is trying to do, while not always to my musical taste, is a good inclusive thing, and I guess I wanted to add some good faith commentary as opposed to the avalanche of bullshit that will inevitably be shouted now that this album is officially out. But I think something truly productive would be to listen to the demographic that this is meant for. Ask women, both cis and trans, and anyone within the LGBTQIA+ community who enjoys this music, is this inclusive to them? Collins says in this interview on the YouTube channel Idobi, which I highly recommend you watch.
I wanted to be Scene Queen because I wanted to make it known, for a while the space was not safe for the little scene queens. We had a lot of weird men in the scene, and I wanted to make it a known thing, this is a place for women in the scene, so Scene Queen is the name, and if you're a scene queen you can come here and hang out, you know?
Whatever you think about the music itself, if that is Scene Queen's true intention for her music, then no, pop metal has not gone too far.